Hey guys, OG Albina here, bringing you guys our Smogon Kickoff Draft League Tour bracket run. That was a lot of words. Basically, if you didn't know, Smogon kind of started like, I don't know if you would call it a partnership or just like an official acknowledgement of the draft format as a metagame, which is really cool because it opens up a lot of opportunity for draft to be pushed to a much bigger singles audience and even doubles, obviously, because VGC is, obviously a thing, and to kind of kick it all off and kick off their big tournament circuit that I talked about in a previous video, the What is Draft League video. They're doing this kickoff tournament, and there was a lot of people in this tournament, man. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that this is the biggest draft league tournament of all time. I think there's well over 1,000 people, and I mean, even beyond pools, it's the round of 309, I don't know, like 600 something. It was a ridiculous amount of people, right? So there's a ton of new players, a ton of old players. It's a really cool tournament, really cool thing, and I'm excited to show you my bracket run. I think I have a really cool team. I got some cool games for you guys, and I kind of want to showcase it and, show it all off to you. So if you do enjoy today's tournament coverage, be sure to drop a like on the video, as well as sub to the channel if you're new to draft and you're just checking me out because of the Smogon Tour and things like that. Be sure to stick around. I think we make some really cool, informative, and fun draft league content that's going out pretty consistently. And yeah, with that being said, I want to show you guys my team really quick before I jump into the battles. It's going to be really quick. It's not going to be like a super long draft analysis or anything like that, but I wanted to show you what we're rocking with. Now, I'm not particularly I don't particularly remember when exactly we got our first pick, like which number in the draft where I think we were 3rd overall, but we ended up having CHIEN PAO fall to us, and I have been dying to try this thing in a league. In all my other leagues, I've kind of went for other top tier picks where it hasn't fallen to me and things like that, so this is my opportunity to try it out for a full season, and let me tell you, it does not disappoint. This thing is an absolute monster with its incredible speed tier 135, which is really hard to come by in this meta. I feel like there's either things that are really fast and the rest of the metagame is incredibly slow. So this thing, incredible speed tier. Not only does it help us outpace the majority of our opponent's team, we're very often going to be able to run Adamant. Plus, we have 2 great forms of priority in Ice Shard and Sucker Punch. We can Swords Dance up and win the game with Icicle Crash / Spinner, plus Crunch, plus Sucker and Ice Shard, like we said before, Psychic Fangs, and especially Terra Blast. This is going to be our Terra Captain for the tour. Basically, you get 1 Mon that you can use as a terrestrial captain, I guess, throughout your run. And CHIEN PAO was the Pokemon I picked for our team. I think it's incredibly versatile with that Terra Blast and that Terra option. We run a plethora of different types throughout this tournament, and whether it be stabs or some other coverage move that we don't typically have, it makes it pretty darn incredible and almost unguardable if you use it correctly. So I think this Pokemon, honestly, personally, I think it's, I'd say, 2nd best Terra Captain in the tour. I think the best Terra Captain is Dragonite, and that was a big sleeper going into this, but Dragonite saw incredible success, and I think in a good builder's hands, free Terra Dragonite is a monster, but I think CHIEN PAO is definitely the 2nd best that was available and allowed to us. They banned Terra on, I think, Valiant and Moon, and they banned Bundle altogether, and there might have been another one that banned Terra on. So I think we definitely got one of the best Terramons. This thing, it's very simple. It's not going to be doing anything other than clicking SD plus 3 attacks, or just 4 attacks with either Life Orb, Band, Heavy Duty Boots, something of the sort, maybe a boosting item, I don't know. Regardless, really, really incredible book. Now, next up, I wanted to grab something that really kind of aided in CHIEN PAO's ability to just win the game, and that is going to be Garchomp next year. Now, if you don't know, Garchomp kind of had a switch in roles this generation in draft, whereas in the past, it was kind of that win con itself, that round 1 pick that you'd pick and you'd do Swords Dance and Scale Shot and do all these crazy things. Now, it functions as probably like the best spiker in the tier. It gets spikes plus rocks with an incredible defensive typing as well as good bulk, very strong offensively with a great speed tier as well. And on top of that, you can still be WinCon Garchomp. You can still SD, Edge Quake plus like either Stealth Rock or Spike just fine. Or you can run Scarf variants. You could run dual hazards with Rocky Helmet and Rough Skin and things of the sort. This thing is really incredible. It's very versatile, and it honestly really appreciates CHIEN PAO breaking through the fat grasses that Garchomp does not appreciate at all. It also takes care of opposing dragons that we may not want to deal with, and they kind of can overload similar checks in the sense that maybe Chien Pao and Garchomp are, you know, soft checked by a specific water type or a specific fairy type. One of them can kind of do the weakening and softening of said check for the other, and we can thrive and do well. So I'm pretty excited for that. Third up, I ended up grabbing a Azumarill, and I think I've preached this from the highest of the mountaintops. I think in a pre-home meta, this is probably the best fairy in the format, in my opinion, right now. It is an absolutely incredible Pokemon that checks pretty much the entire top end of the board defensively, which is incredible. Now, offensively, it's still amazing. Obviously, this base 50 is low, but, you know, we get our huge power to double that and double the stat and make it really, really strong and really, really powerful with great priority, which is great for picking off certain things. Our dual stabs plus, like, Ice Spinner are going to be great coverage. We also get things like Super Power and cool things like that. So, offensively, it's great with a Choice Band, with Belly Drum, but in particular, I love Assault Vest this gen. I think Assault Vest is great, and I love, like, Fizz Def and Spadef Rest Stock variants. I think they're really, really good this gen and checking opposing Chien Paos. Chi-Yus. What else does it check? Why am I blanking on the top tier mons? This is really annoying me. Hold on. Pokemon like Palafin. Pokemon like, let's see, Roaring Moon. It's a phenomenal check to that thing. We already mentioned the Chien Pao. We already mentioned Great Tusk is another thing it can soft check at the very least. Volcarona, if we hard call the Terra Grass and the Giga Drain, but you can Sap Sipper that thing. Like, I think it's a really incredible anti-meta right now, and I think it's just gonna really, really glue this team together and give it kind of like part of that defensive backbone that it really needs. Then, I went for the little bit more offense, and I kind of wanted to bridge the speed tiers between Garchomp, Chien Pao. I ended up going Iron Moth. This is another one I really wanted to try. Future Volk is really, really cool. It's a fire and poison, and it pairs phenomenally with things like Garchomp, Chien Pao, really, really helping them out a ton, especially Garchomp, really beating anything that Garchomp doesn't like, in particular, those water, or those fairies and those grasses. Iron Moth bullies them. Just absolutely massacres them, which is great. Sorry about that. It's a little late when I'm recording this guy. But, unfortunately, it doesn't get Quiver, but it does get some great tools. It can Agility for a speed boost. It can Fire Dance to get some special attack boost. It has Dazzling Gleam, Discharge, Energy Ball, Bug Buzz. It can U-turn, it can overheat. It gets Toxic Spikes. It gets Morning Sun. It has decent defensive utility in the sense that it has a very fat Spadef stat, no HP stat. Defense is a little bit lacking. We have that 4 times weakness to ground. And if you look at our team right now so far, we're pretty darn weak to ground, so it's going to be something we're going to have to patch up a little bit later. But offensively, the combination of Chien Pao, Garchomp, Iron Moth is really, really solid start, and something I'm really excited to use this tournament. Then we end up grabbing Fortress. I wanted some hazard removal myself. This gives me another spiker as well. It takes a lot of pressure off of Garchomp to be that spike setting bot or that dual hazards bot. Fortress can do so decently enough. It got Body Press this gen, being added to a game where, you know, Body Press exists, which is a great tool for it. It's essentially another stab. Makes it a little bit less passive. It has decent coverage overall. And it gives me Rapid Spin as well to remove hazards from my side of the field. So I'm not forced into Boots, Moth, and Chien Pao very often. I can get that spin off and, you know, be a big nuisance and things like that, which is awesome. It's also a steel type, which I feel like aren't very plentiful. Aren't very plentiful in this meta right now. So getting one of those is going to be nice, and it really was the best one left on the board, and I really, really wanted that good hazard removal, and there just wasn't really much of it otherwise. Then I had to address that ground issue because it's looking tough right now. So I ended up grabbing Rotom Mow. There's no Zygarde in the metagame. There's no Drill in the metagame. So really the two grounds that we don't necessarily check aren't in the game. So even being neutral to ground technically doesn't matter because obviously we do have our Levitate ability. We bully most grounds, and we do not, ever really have our Volt switches blocked unless it's a really ballsy ground type come in our Volt, or it's one that's like neutral to it, maybe like a Steelix or something of the sorts. But regardless, Rotom is going to be a very, very solid Pokemon for the team. It's great with a Scarf. It's great spreading status with like Will-O-Wisp and Thunder Wave and things of the sort. It's great at Nasty plotting up and being a big nuisance there. It can be Scarf, it can be just Fizz Def. It did lose Pain Split and Defog this gen, which are big, but I'm also a big fan of like Protect Rotom Mow. I think that's another really cool option in conjunction with like a Will-O-Wisp to scout moves, gain leftovers, passive recovery back, and chip down the opponent even more than we already are doing. So, and it could be great with like T-Spike spam, things like that, with Moth and Fortress both getting access to that. Then I wanted to grab yet another rocker. Again, I don't want to be forced to bring Fortress every week, or bring either Fortress and Garchomp and bring like Rocks for it, or bring like Garchomps with Rocks or something like that. I want another Rocker, and I lost to a good Ghost type right now. Like, absolutely got demolished by one. So what I ended up doing was drafting the Dunsparce. This is my Licky of the generation. Those of you who've been watching the channel so far, you know I have it in BBR. I have it in another league as well. I love this thing. I think it is absolutely incredible. It's incredibly versatile. It has such a deep move pool. It is not passive in the slightest. It gets reliable recovery and roost. It can stealth rock. It can glare. It can calm mind. It can coil. It can be physical, special, mix. So many different things. And it is incredibly bulky. Nothing kills this thing in one, and I think it's an awesome Pokemon. I am really excited for the Dunsparce. And again, it's a great catch-all. Check does so many different things, and it patches up our Ghost weakness immensely. Now, speaking of Ghosts, I actually grabbed one last, and I think this was a really cool pick here. Now, it's nothing crazy. It's just a Spiritomb, but in like the tournament usage stats, I saw it's like Spiritomb only got drafted like 7 times, which I felt was interesting because it's typically a Pokemon, at least in previous generations, that you saw drafted a decent amount in 8mon. Mostly in like Natdex formats where you're going up against like offensive fighting megas like Medi and Gallade, that it just walled pretty well. Obviously, those aren't in the game, but there are a lot of strong fightings, and my team doesn't really have a good fighting resist right now. It is Ironmoth and Azu, and again, taking a little pressure off of Azu. But I also struggle with like psychic types, things like Espathra running through the tier with like, you know, potential terrestrial options and things like that. And even without Terra, really ripped through my team right now with psychic resist Fortress. So I wanted to have a good dark type to potentially be able to deal with those. More priority in Sucker Punch and Shadow Sneak. Can be physical, mix, special. It can Trick Room if we really need it to. I believe we can Nasty Plot as well. Yeah, I kept it. So overall, pretty solid Pokemon. But yeah, that is going to be our 8mon team. Pretty quick little introduction to the tournament. I'll be right back with our first game. Alrighty guys, here we are with our first game of the tournament. I'm going to be playing them in order. I have 4 pooled games here to show you guys today. And then, you know, provided that we do make brackets, spoilers, I probably wouldn't be uploading if we didn't make brackets. I will, you know, have those games go up separately on their own going forward. But I'm just going to do them in order in which I played them. The first one is going to be, his surname was Gengar OTP. I think his name was like Inky on Showdown or on Discord or something like that, but nice guy. He was our first game here. Now he has the Dragonite Tauros Paldea, which Sprite isn't working for me in the replay. I refreshed it a couple times, it's not working. Glimmora, Mimikyu, Ditto, and Scizor. Now, I'll show you guys the team that we're rocking out with. First up, we have a Terra Ground CHIEN PAO. The reason we're Terra Ground with Terra Blast is because I really expected him to be Fire Tauros, and Terra Ground's going to allow me to blow through that thing if I can catch it on Swords Dance on the Switch. I'm adamant CHIEN PAO this week because of the way Speed Tiers worked out. I can Swords Dance up and Terra Ground through his team. Really easy. He also just simply doesn't have a ground resist on this team. He has the immunity and D-Knight. Other than that, ground's pretty free. Ground plus Dark and then Ice Shards is pretty free. He's also Terra D-Knight, so he can obviously change his typing and, you know, not be a flying type anymore, obviously. Then we have a pretty Fizz-Def Fortress with Gyro Ball, Body Press, Rapid Spin, and Stealth Rock. This thing's going to be a solid check to D-Knight minus Fire Punch variants. It checks non-Swords Dance Scizor variants, but really it checks that Mimikyu phenomenally, which is going to be the main thing that it's kind of here for, is checking that thing, keeping annoying hazards away from Glimmora, being that his spin blocker is the Pokemon we are checking. I think that we have a pretty free opportunity to get spins off, and it's going to be our rocker in this game in order to get him up pretty easy. Then we have a Spiking Garchomp right here with a Roselli Berry. He also had a Lycanroc Dusk on his team that he actually didn't bring. The Roselli Berry was mostly for that, plus this defense investment. But it also helps out with the Glimmora, being that his best way to hit me is going to be the Dazzling Gleam. We'll be able to chew that thing up pretty well. We have Spikes, Swords Dance, Earthquake, and Dragon Claw. Again, there's no ground resist on this team right now. And his only immunity is weak to Dragon at the moment. If he tears, then, you know, he's not going to really resist ground anymore with anything that resists Dragon, which is kind of the beauty of Dragon Ground stab combination. So that does really well. Roselli could help in a pinch against like a Mimikyu as well. If we're at full, we'll live a +2 hit pretty easy. So that'll be obviously nice. Then we have a FizzDef, Rocky Helmet, Azumarill. This plus the combination of Fortress should deal with really any FizzDef or physically attacking D-Knight set. This thing also checks any kind of Tauros Paldea very well, whether it be water or the fire. We can check it pretty darn well as well. So pretty simple stuff. Then we have a 4 attacks Iron Moth. We are rocking out with Fire Dance, Sludge Wave, Psychic, and Overheat. Pretty simple. We're here just to punch holes through our opponent's team. If you look again, he does not have switches to this Pokemon. Fiery Dance, Sludge Wave, and Psychic hits everything really hard. Overheat is just like a nuke if I really need it against like a Terra Normal D-Knight, and it's, you know, not at its multi-skill or something like that, and Overheat kills it, and I need that little bit more damage. It's going to give me that option, and like +1 Overheats to this team are an absolute nuke, so that'll be really, really nice. Psychic is great for Glimmora plus Tauros, which will be the only things that can take on our stab, or our fire stab really on this team. And then, or I guess D-Knight as well, but it doesn't appreciate the Sludge Wave. And yeah, it should do really, really well this game. We can lift +2 hits from Scizor, obviously, but as well as Mimikyu, we can lift +2 Shadow Sneak from pretty darn easily. Then we have a Choice Scarf Rotom. Pretty offensive here. You'll notice he actually does not have a ground type, so we can lead it pretty freely and just kind of volt switch around his team. It's also a Scarfer that is faster than D-Knight at +1, which is great. And again, we can just volt switch around. We can put him in a pretty tough spot. He doesn't have a particularly great switch into volt switch actually, other than his Ditto, which is going to be nice to know. Now, obviously going into the battle, big threats is that D-Knight, man. D-Knight is really scary to deal with. Being able to tear into anything with its great coverage and great bulk and multi-scale and option Terra Blast can be a big nuisance. I think Scizor can get out of hand pretty quick if I do let my Volcarona or Future Volt take any chip, and then my Foray go down. And even then, Foray isn't... I don't know, Foray's a pretty good check being that it doesn't have Roost anymore. And then... yeah, the Glimmora can also be pretty annoying offensively if Guard Jump goes down early, but other than that, I'm pretty comfortable with the team we got here. It's mainly just that Dragonite and Scizor that I'm super worried about. Okay, we can jump right into it here. I am going to lead off with Rotom, like I said, as the Glimmora lead's going to happen. Again, I'm fast in this thing. I am max speed. Or no, it's a tie, I think. But I don't expect this thing to be Scarf, and especially don't expect a Scarf Sludge Wave to come out, even if he is a random Scarf set. I am going to just Volt Switch here. It'll break any kind of Sash on this thing, and it doesn't pop that Toxic Debris, and I'll be able to get out of my Guard Chomp, as he does elect to get up his Rocks here. I'm going to get up a Spike myself, just to break any Sashes on things like, I don't know, random Sashes or something like that in the back, as he does elect to stay in actually Dazzling Gleam, and I eat my Roselia Berry, which isn't really needed for anything else, so I'm completely fine with that, to be completely honest. You're going to see it does absolutely no damage. I'm going to take him out the next turn with the Earthquake. Now, this does trigger the Toxic Debris, but I do have Spin in the back, as well as a Grounded Poison, so I'm not too worried about the T-Spike going up. Then we're going to see Dragonite come out. I want to go into my Fortress here. This tells me he's going to do some kind of shenanigans where he's not going to be a dragon or something of the sorts. Maybe even Terra Fairy in order to really punish me for staying in right here, because he can't really Earthquake either. And he could always be Weakness Policy as well. So I am going to make that play on the Fortress, as he does Terra Fairy and Dragon Dance. Now, if he is Fire Punch, he's going to be able to take me on pretty darn well and absolutely demolish me with this hit. But again, Fortress... I don't know, it was weird. I think in hindsight, maybe my play was to go into my Azumarill right here, but +1 Fire Punch plus Rock and T-Spike could have put me in range of something else on the team, and then I could have been in a pretty tough spot, but you're going to see I like to stay in and kind of just sack this thing off in order to get some Rocky Helmet chip. And now from here, I'm going to go into my Rotom. I'm going to Volt Switch out. He's not a Dragon type anymore, so, I mean, in any ways, regardless, this was neutral. I'm going to be able to Volt Switch out, and what I can do is I can get into my Azumarill, and if he wants to attack me, he's going to take enough chip to where I can take him out with, you know, in conjunction with our Rocky Helmet plus an attack, as Azu is going to come out, and especially if he does end up Fire Punching, which he does right here, only just 14%, which is great. And then the next turn, he does E-Speed for a ton of damage. He actually gets a crit, which is unfortunate, because I still would have been able to kind of keep this thing for a sack in the back, or for a Rocky Helmet chip on like something like Mimikyu or the Scizor, but he does get that crit, which is going to put us in range of poison, but thankfully we just attack and we're able to knock this guy out, pick him off, and kind of trade 1-for-1, and we're up we're tied down to, or tied 4-4 at this point. I'm going to go to my Rotom again. It's drawback free. The only like bad situation, I guess, would be this little Ditto coming in, but even then, like, we're just both going to Volt Switch, right? And I have better switch-ins to my Rotom than you have switch-ins to my Rotom. So I feel pretty comfortable Volt Switching. If I lost the tie, oh well. I can't really hit myself. And if I win the tie, I get to go on my Guard Chomp, as I don't expect the Leaf Storm to come out. He does Volt Switch, which is incredible for me. And from here, I'm going to be able to just Earthquake, as I don't expect him to want to stay in and risk taking that damage. We get a ton of damage off from the Scizor. And from here, again, I don't have great switch-ins. I don't want to switch into my Iron Moth because after just a little bit of chip, we're basically in range of that Mimikyu at +2. And it's really one of my main contingency plans for it at this point. So I do sack off my Garchomp, showing that I believe he's basically going to show to be, no, is he pads? Hold on. I don't know. But we're going to go out into our Iron Moth here. We're going to Fiery Dance on the Tauros, do a little bit of damage, and hope, thankfully put in a range of a Psychic, pick it off here. Ditto is going to come out next. Now, I don't want to take any damage on this guy. There's really no reason to. I make a pretty aggressive play of going on my Chien Pao. But at this point, even if he makes a weird play and Fire Dance calls it, I don't super need this. I can still kind of come in with my Iron Moth and, you know, put in a little bit of work. Maybe Rotom was a little bit more of a safe sack, but I did expect a Psychic to come out here. He does throw it off, which is good, thankfully. He's going to Psychic here again, just kind of sacking off this Ditto, knowing he can't really switch into anything else, or they just kind of get to it KO'd or just die in the case of the Scizor. Scizor's going to come out here. I am going to elect to finally throw off my Terra. Terra Ground as the Scizor comes out. Eat up this Bullet Punch, and then just throw off a big Crunch and take him down. Last up is Mimikyu. I have no reason to let this thing set up for free and, you know, not lose its disguise. So I'm going to Crunch and get a defense drop, actually, which is pretty big because potentially this could put me in a good spot to pick this thing off with an Ice Shard. But its leftovers actually ends up saving it, as it is going to live on just 8%. Thankfully, like I said, we did EV for +2 Sneak. He doesn't actually end up clicking right here, so I don't know if he just didn't have it. But regardless, we're going to be able to take out the Mimikyu and pick up a nice 2-0 victory and move on with a 1-0 record into Game 2. I'll be right back with that one. Game 2, we were going up against Colosseum Productions, and it's a pretty scary Sun team here with big threats like the opposing Chien Pao, Scovillain, which is an absolute monster versus me, a Terra Gengar, so thankfully not a Terra Chien Pao or a Terra Scovillain, so that's a big saving grace for us. And then Ceruledge under the sun is incredibly terrifying. We actually do not switch into his offense very well at all, but I think we built a pretty fun team nonetheless. We kind of showed off right here. We're once again rocking out with a Terra Ground Chien Pao with Ice Spinner, Ice Shard, Terra Blast, and Sacred Sword. So we're just 4 attacks right here. Does pretty darn well. There was something, oh yeah, Sacred Sword is for the opposing Chien Pao. If we can't win a speed tie in like a last ditch scenario, we don't have anything for Chien Pao and we need to win the tie, we have that option. Terra Ground is incredible for things like Torkoal, as well as the keys. If they are weakened, low, put in range, it's going to allow me to nuke through those things. And Terra Ground also, oh, actually no, I was going to say it prevents me from getting T-Wave, but I don't get T-Wave no matter what because I'm a Dark type, so. Regardless, being able to Terra Ground is nice to really push through things like that. And it also hits things like Ceruledge and the Gengar incredibly hard, still super effectively, so missing out on that Crunch isn't a bad thing, right? And then, obviously, Ice Spinner and Ice Shard is great for things like Scovillain, especially that Ice Shard is really going to rip through that thing pretty darn hard. Sorry, I forgot to switch over. Then we have a Lumberry Garchomp, where Earthquake, Swords, and Spikes, and Fire Fang with the Lumberry. Now, I actually originally even thought about going Mono Earthquake, because if you look at my opponent's team, his whole roster, the 2 he left on the bench too, he did not have a single ground immunity. There was not a ground immunity, nor was there a ground resist on his team. So I really thought about going Mono EQ, and even going like sub Swords Dance, Earthquake, Spikes, just to really punish things, but I realized that he could obviously go Magnet Rise, Klefki, and I wanted to account for that, so that's why we have Fire Fang here. But realistically, if that's not happening, we're just clicking Earthquake this game. We can get up Spikes pretty freely, which is great. We beat the Spinner, which is awesome, and then like a +2 EQ just kills everything on this team. There's nothing he can do about it. Even with our bulkier Shred, he does not deal with this Pokemon very well at all. Sorry, I keep forgetting to switch back, so that's going to be Garchomp. Next up, we have a Spadef to Dunsparce. We are rocking out with the Chople Berry, Boom Burst, Roost, Earth Power, and Glare. We are max Spadef for that Gengar over there, but we also check things like Scovillain and Torkoal decently well enough. And Boom Burst plus Earth Power actually hits the team very hard. Glare is good speed control and really slows things down. Then we have Rest Talk, Fizdef, Azumarill. Who would have thunk it? It's here for that opposing Chien Pao, which is a big issue. Thankfully, the Chien Pao is not Terra, so it can't Terra Electric or Poison us, which is incredible for us, obviously. Being able to check that thing defensively is going to be really clutch for this team. Yeah, there's not much else to say other than it really does wall the heck out of Chien Pao really well. Then we have a Booster Energy Iron Moth, which is actually modest this week. We're Agility 3 attacks, Fire Dance, Sludge Wave, Agility Psychic. With that Booster Energy and our Special Attack and Agility up, and maybe get into Fire Dance boost or something of sorts, we absolutely rip through a team like this. Now, Ceruledge does resist our dual stab, but +1 Psychic with the Booster Energy basically kills it after hazards. Pretty much guarantee unless it's a super bulky variant. And we can realistically set up on a few things and really cleave through a team like this and really do a lot of work. Or even if we don't even find the opportunity to set up, there's only one Pokemon that's guaranteed faster than us, a couple that have or one that has a speed tie, Gengar, and then the option of Sunscovillan, which can be a little bit annoying. But regardless, the speed tier is still really good here, so not too worried about that for sure. Then we have our Fortress. We're pretty darn Fizz-Def once again. Body Press, Earthquake, Stealth Rock, and Rapid Spin. Pretty simple stuff here in this week's game. We can go ahead and jump right into it. I am going to elect to lead off with my Garchomp just to really punish that Sun lead or punish that Klefki lead or whatever it may be with a strong EQ. He's going to lead off with his Gengar, and just in case he's like Life Orb or Specs Icy Wind or something weird, he can OHKO me, and even then, even if he's just like Gleam, I don't want to take that damage on my Garchomp right now, so I am going to make sure I pivot out right here. Now, he scouts for Scarf, which makes sense as well, but I don't know my opponent well enough to be able to scout something like that comfortably and not, be worried about, dying, I guess. But we're going to go Dunsparce here as he goes into the Cuffy, but this is fine. This thing doesn't immediately threaten me at all. I can actually just go ahead and throw off a Glare and paralyze it just to, make it not function as well as it probably wants to going forward, as evident by this second turn paralysis right here as I Earth Power, pop a Shuka Berry, showing this thing is incredibly Spadef. I'm going to go out to my Fortress right here as he gets paired once again. I believe I get up my rocks on the Reflect, and at this point I'm kind of stalling out these turns. He's going to make the pivot out into his Torkoal, showing to not be Boots, presumably being like a Heat Rock set or whatever it may be. But again, I'm not worried about this thing. I am max Spadef. Anything that this thing throws at me is going to absolutely bounce off of us. So I like to just clear here. I see a Rapid Spin come out, and again, this is completely fine. I'm not super worried. I go out into my Garchomp right here on a Yawn, but little as you know, this scenario right here is phenomenal for me, because what I'm going to be able to do is Sword Stance up in this thing's face as he elects to get up his own rocks, and our own Lumberry is going to come up incredibly clutch right here, and we're going to be able to take out this Sun with ease, as there's only 3 turns left right here for the entire game, which means this Scovillain that was looking so deadly into my team just is almost a non-factor at this point. So him sacking off that Sun made me feel immensely more confident about the game. Next up, the CHIEN PAO is going to come out, an Ice Spinner, take a little bit of chip from our Rocky Helmet, and make the pivot on to Scovillain. At this point, I'm not really in a position where I need to play around him, and I'm going to go hard and play aggressively around him because I am in such an advantageous position. I'm going to go hard Garchomp because I read on my calc, I live any Energy Ball or whatever it may be in the Sun pretty darn well. Any fire moves especially, so we're going to pivot out right here as he actually likes to go Solar Beam, a Life Orb Solar Beam, which is a ridiculous amount of damage. Thankfully, we do live. Sun goes away, so he ends up just sacking this guy off to get a free switch into his CHIEN PAO. Now, again, I could switch to my Azumarill, but the way I saw it, if he got like 1 flinch or 1 crit or whatever it may be, being that we've already taken rocks and we're at 68, I really didn't want to allow this thing to set up for free. So I'm actually going to elect to just attack this guy. Plus, 1, this Earthquake is going to do a lot, but 2, Azumarill is still really good for that Ceruledge in the back, and I want to make sure I have him sticking around for a little bit. So I do EQ right here. We're also going to see from this point now, though, I know that if he goes ahead and clicks Crunch, we should live from full with our Fortress and force him to take yet another turn the next turn, which is great. So the 2 turns of Rocky Helmet should take him out, and we're going to be able to make that pivot right here. He makes the Ice Ground play, which is a bit of a passive mid-ground, especially because Crunch just covered the most on this team. Not the biggest deal, though. Again, I'll take it as he is going to take 1 turn of Life Orb, or 1 turn Rocky Helmet, and then the other turn and go down here with our Fortress. Then the Gengar is going to come out here as I go into my CHIEN PAO. And again, at this point, I can just pop my Terra, right? This entire team is weak to ground at this point. I am Terra ground. I live any hit that this team wants to go for, and I can really exploit them well. So I am going to go ahead and throw off that Terra ground as he Terra fairies, actually. And because of that, he's only going to take 95 from our Terra ground, which is a bit unfortunate. Not the end of the world, you guys get brought really low, and the Dazzling Gleam doesn't necessarily kill me. But what you're going to see is a pretty funny interaction is he actually forgot that if he's Black Sludge, and he obviously turns into something that's not a poison type anymore, he takes damage from that Black Sludge, so it ends up picking him off there. Now, do I think it mattered? No, I don't think it mattered, because I just Terra Blasted the next turn, but it was a pretty funny interaction nonetheless. Next, Cerulege is going to come out, and again, we're not allowing this thing to set up for free. We really have no way of affording to do so. So I'm just going to click Terra Blast right here and really punish him if he wants to set up a Sword Dance or something with a sword. He does make a play of just going for Sneak, but again, I'm completely fine with that. We're not really playing for differential right now. Next, Azumarill is going to come out. He is going to Shadow Sneak just to get a little bit of damage off, as I do. Pick him off. With a Liquidation right here. Out comes the Klefki. I'm going to make the hard pivot to my Iron Moth just because I take this thing on so well with it. And he's going to go ahead and just forfeit here as the game is basically over. There's not much he could do from this point. So I definitely get the forfeit at this point. But yeah, we're able to take home our second game 2-0. Putting us in a pretty phenomenal position thus far. But we got to obviously keep the ball rolling. And we'll see if we can do it next week. Our next game. I'll be right back with that guy. Alrighty guys, game number 3, we have Black Knight Gawain here, if I'm saying that right. I don't mean to say it wrong and be rude, but he has a pretty interesting team here. He's got a Terra, Garchomp, a Corviknight, Tyranitar, Gengar, Rotom-Mow, and a Cloyster. Basically a Gen 8 team. This looks like very reminiscent of something you might see in like Gen 8 Galar decks or something like that. I'm pretty sure, yeah, these are all Galar Dex bonds too, which is pretty cool. But we have a pretty cool squad we're rocking out with this week. We can go ahead and show it off here. First up, we do have our CHIEN PAO. We are Terra Dark this week, going with our Stab with this week, this battle right here. And if you look at Crunch and you look at his team, his only Crunch resist is going to be that Tyranitar, which we can Sacred Sword through. And then +2 Crunch and Sucker Punch with our Terra Dark is going to be incredible. It's also going to allow us to not be 4 times weak to Body Press from the Corviknight, which is really, really nice. Then we have a pretty fun Garchomp here. We are mixed Life Orb with Earthquake, Fire Blast, Draco Meteor, and Spikes. It's a great spike in the sense that Life Orb, Fire Blast with this much investment is going to 2-hit KO Corviknight. Unless he spams Roost predicting our Fire Blast, we will be able to 2-hit KO him and, you know, kind of prevent him from keeping Spikes away. But then if he sees our Special, he's like, okay, I can pivot T-Tar. No, we're gonna blow you ass backwards with an Earthquake here. So that's gonna be really nice. Draco Meteor is great for opposing Garchomp, but as well as Cloyster gives an Oko and Cloyster. Fire Blast is great for Rotom. And then Earthquake hits the Gengar. So like mixed Chomp goes absolutely buck wild here, as you can see. It does really well in this team. Then we have a Heavy Duty Boots Moth. We have Fire Dance, U-Turn, Dazzling Gleam, and Discharge. Pretty simple stuff. Now, Garchomp can be a big annoyance to us, which is why we have Dazzling Gleam. Same thing with T-Tar. But realistically, T-Tar is best going to be handled by us catching it with the switch and U-turning out. Other than that, we just nuke the rest of his team. So we're going to force very specific switches. And if we can't chip things down, get a Fire Dance off, and clean through with Fire Dance plus Dazzling Gleam, we're going to go for it, obviously. So that thing does really, really well in this game. Then we have our Dunsparce rocking out once again with a Chople Berry. We're the same set we were in the last game, actually. Boomburst, Earth Power, Roost, and Glare. Going to be our Gengar check. It's going to pair things, be a big, big nuisance, and, you know, chip things down over the course of the game. Last coverage move was a bit of a struggle when it came to finding what we wanted coverage-wise, but I'd rather chip down the T-Tar opposed to the Corviknight that I'm not really going to beat very well 1v1 anyways. And I figured that most of our team kind of lures in, or either lures in, like the CHIEN PAO, or just beats Corviknight in general. So I figured that having Earth Power was a little bit nicer here personally. So I don't know, maybe that could end up biting me in the ass. Then we have our Rotom-Mow. We are pretty fizzed off, decently fast with Thunderbolt, Volt Switch, Will-O-Wisp, and Leaf Storm. Pretty simple stuff. This is going to be our main switch into something like the Garchomp if he's not a mixed variant with that Fire Blast, which I don't really expect him to be super much. We can take that on. We can throw off big Will-O-Wisps and burn everything. We can Volt Switch all over this team outside of the Garchomp, which is the main thing we're here to check. So if that switches in on us and we can't deal with it, we're doing something wrong, obviously. But yeah, really, really solid Mon. And hopefully it does some work. Then lastly, we have our Azumarill. We are actually Choice Band. We are bringing an offensive Azumarill. Finally, if you look at his team, he does not appreciate Big Azu here at all. If we click the right button, he's not going to appreciate it. Now, Cloister can pivot in Liquidation, and Corvi can pivot in on the Play Rough, and Rotom can pivot on Liquidation as well. But realistically, Liquidation is pretty darn free, or even Play Rough, depending on how we can deal with things. And if we catch that Corvi with a Liquidation once, it's basically a 2-hit KO, and it's basically going to put us in an incredible spot. Plus, that Banded Aqua Jet is going to be great for things like Garchomp, Tyranitar, especially if Dragon Dancing up, or the Gengar really picking them off. So, yeah, with that being said, we can kind of jump into it. You're going to see that we are going to elect to lead off with our Iron Moth right here. And I feel like if we see a lead like a Corviknight, or even like this Rotom, or even a Cloister, we can really, really threaten them well offensively and force them out and get off a big U-turn. We see the Rotom lead in my head. I'm like, perfect. Freest U-turn of my life. So I just click it. Unfortunately, my opponent stays in. Now, it's not the biggest deal in the world, right? Because 1, does 32, but 2, I'm not super worried about Rotom. He's not going to Wisp here in the face of my Iron Moth turn 1. Be an absolutely crazy play. I don't even think he's going to Leaf Storm, so I'm going to go hard into my Garchomp right here, so he does elect to Volt Switch. And right here, I'm going to actually get up a Spike. The reason I get up a Spike instead of just Fire Blasting raw on the switch-in is because I didn't think you go hard Corviknight with the knowledge that my Chomp can be special and can just blow through this Corviknight depending on my set. I figured we'd want to pivot and scout, maybe go T-Tar first, something of the sorts. But realistically, not that big of a deal, because if I Spike and he's like Defog anyways, I still get that same kind of scenario happening where I'm forcing a Fire Blast on this Corviknight, which you're going to see that is what's going to end up happening. I do Fire Blast and do a clean 63%, so a big 2-hit KO even after leftovers, as he does Defog. I'm going to make a pretty aggressive play right here and get up another Spike, expecting him to pivot out, which I do get that play correct. He is going to pivot out here into his Tyranitar as I get up my Spike, and again, you're going to see he is not expecting us to be mixed right here. Now, if I would have Fire Blast, I don't know if that would have put him in range. As funny as it sounds, I don't know if Life Orb Fire Blast did 6% to T-Tar. It probably did, to be completely honest. And if I did that, I would have put this thing in range and just killed it, and still had my Garchomp around. But unfortunately, he is going to chew that up and knock us out with an Ice Punch right here, because we're very not defensive Garchomp. We go down, we do trade though, and we trade, while it only looks like it's 1-1, we traded for, what? I mean, this was already from our Moth, but this is at 44%, and the T-Tar is dead. So we're looking pretty okay here. I'm going to go my Rotom right here, as he does elect to pivot into his Garchomp on his Corviknight. This is fine, though, because, again, the one thing that's blocking Volt Switch is going to be the thing that I'm kind of here to check. I am going to Will-O-Wisp this Chomp right here and go ahead and burn it. As he does Swords Dance again, I know that I can eat one hit, especially being that it's burned. I can throw off a Leaf Storm right here, really chip this thing down, and then kind of pivot accordingly and go around somewhere else. As I do go out to my Azumarill right here, thinking that he might go for like a Dragon Claw or something of the sorts. I could pick him up with an Aqua Jet. Unfortunately, he does go for a Poison Jab, which makes sense if he was carrying it for the Azu, because it does hit Azu plus Rotom. So hindsight, maybe not my safest mid-ground, but I didn't really have anything else, and I didn't think I needed Azu to win this game. It was definitely my least useful member at this point, outside of maybe Rotom itself. So I am going to be able to go on my Moth here. He does Tear Steel, and I Fiery Dance now. It kind of looks like a demon play, and like I just called him to Tear Steel, but at 17%, based on the damage he was taking before, and even if he was pretty bulky, I was able to knock him out the Fire Dance, and it just gave me the opportunity for a special attack boost, so why not take it? So we do just go ahead and throw that off. Don't get the boost, but if you look at his team now, like, what does he do about this Pokemon? He really just can't do anything about it. It just Okos and 1v1s his entire team at this point. He's going to go Corviknight right here, and I don't know, maybe he was like some quick ball shit, or maybe he was just kind of conceding defeat at this point. But I am going to just throw off a Fiery Dance and knock it out. Perfect, even if he was, like, we didn't die to Brave Bird. Gengar's going to come out and in an attempt to kind of like save some differential going into the next games. I'm actually going to kind of scout and see what he wants to go for. If he wants to go for like a Destiny Bond or something of the sorts, I have a good Gengar check, but there's not really a reason for me to throw that thing, and it literally just wins the game soon. So I am going to go on to my Dunsparce, as he does D-Bond right here, so not having to take that is going to be incredible for me. I do Glare on the Rotom Switch. In hindsight, I probably should have just Earth Powered if I thought he was staying in, or should have just Boom Bursted if I thought he was switching, but whatever. Not the biggest deal in the world. He's going to Volt Switch here, do absolutely nothing to our Spadef to done, and to get out into his Gengar. And unfortunately, we do Boom Burst again, but again, this isn't a big deal. I am going to be that Chople Berry, so I'm not super worried. I do just try and Glare again, but there's not too much that's going wrong for us at this point. He's going to go ahead and Leaf Storm right here, do a lot of damage, almost making me think that's like Specs Rotom right here, which is crazy. But thankfully we can live another. I am just going to Volt Switch. I don't need health on my Rotom at this point. I can just Volt Switch, get out into my Iron Moth, and again, just click a button. We click Fiery Dance. Don't get the boost, but do knock this guy out. Gengar's going to come out. I'm actually going to make that, make the play of U-turning right here, because he is Scarf. U-turn covers really anything he wants to go for. I live any one hit from him, and I'll be able to kind of react and adjust accordingly as he does debond again. And this is going to allow me to get into my Chien Pao and just start spamming Swords Dance at this point. Because what I can do is I can, 1, PP stall him out of Destiny Bonds if he wants to stay in, but 2, ensure that I Oko this Cloyster coming in so that no shenanigans can occur with Shell Smash and, you know, losing it to it that way. It's right here. I am going to kind of just spam Swords Dance until he elects to want to switch. And then whenever he comes back in, I can always just spam Sucker Punch if that makes any sense right here. So he is just going to kind of continue to spam it. I force him to struggle down right here. And I Swords Dance. I think I counted wrong. My bad. But again, I just take him out the next turn, which isn't a really big deal. Then the Cloyster is going to come out. And I just click Sacred Sword at +6. Not even Cloyster can take that. And we're going to knock it out and take home a nice 4-0 victory, clinching ourselves for the bracket round. Now, if we win our next game, again, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but if we do win, then we are put in a position where we can actually have a bye of round 1. And the less rounds I have to play, the better, because it means we're more likely to move on to higher rounds and things like that. So, yeah, let's go ahead and jump into our last game, which is going to be kind of a, you know, can we make it on to, you know, get a bye round in the bracket, or in bracket. So let's go ahead and jump into that. Alrighty, so for our 4th game, we're going up against Smoke Your Pack on Showdown, which is Tails, who's actually a draft guy. So it's cool that we got you know, a draft player in our pool. I'm pretty sure the people who I played before, again, no shade, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but hadn't played much draft, which is awesome that they, you know, got exposed to the format through this tournament, and I hope they at least enjoyed it enough to maybe try it again someday, and maybe play in the tournament circuit going forward. But I know that Tails is actually a draft player, so this kind of this game felt a little bit more like it had a little bit more gravity to it, because 1, again, we're playing against someone who knows what they're doing, and 2, like I said, if we win this game, we move on to brackets with a bye, which is huge. Going 4-0 basically secures us a bye. Some crazy shenanigans would have to come for us to not get one, which basically involves like a 1 in 128 chance on top of, you know, there being so many people that ended up getting, you know, the bye. So again, it would be pretty crazy. But regardless, if we win this game, we get a bye. And less games equals better, because that's more of a chance to move on farther. So you can see he has a pretty cool team here. He has the Roaring Moon, which cannot Terra. It was one of the bans they had. Iron Hands, Terra's Armarouge, which is really, really cool. I want to try this one super bad. I think he's super slept on and really cool in this format. Clodsire, Corviknight, and then the Cloyster. 2 Cloysters, man, which is pretty scary because Shell Smash is good against me. But I can show off the team that we are rocking out with. First up, we have a Chien Pao Terra Ice, with the Choice Pand, with Icicle Crash, Ice Shard, Psychic Fangs, and Sacred Sword. Does really well here. Our opponent does not appreciate switching into this. Now, we are kind of walled by the Armarouge, which is unfortunate, but I'm presuming it's going to Terra, and it doesn't really switch in on us, and I don't know if he can really ever make the call of going into the Armarouge. Plus, if he's not Boots, and he takes rocks, and, you know, things like that, like, there's a lot of, you know, deterrence and things like that to him really trying to take us on well. So I feel pretty comfortable with not having Dark Stab, at least in this week in particular, as I don't think he'll want to keep his fire typing against my team either, with all the things we have. Then we have a pretty Fizz-Def Fortress here, or Mixed Def, with Body Press, Volt Switch, Rapid Spin, and Earthquake. We're actually 4 attacks, but we still have the Rocky Helmet to punish like U-turns and crunches and Dragon Claws from the Roaring Moon, to punish hits from the Hariyama, to punish U-turns from the Corviknight. Really, all of those things we can punish quite well. We are a Rapid Spinner, so we can get away with the spikes, the Clod sets up, and I wanted Earthquake over having my own hazard on here, just because I wanted to be able to punish that Clod as well and be able to beat him 1v1, as well as do actual damage to the Iron Hands, at least a decent little chunk of damage, which is nice. Then we have a Yachi Berry Garchomp here. We are actually modest max special attack with Draco, Earth Power, Fire Blast, and Spikes. Very spiked Yachi Berry variant here. Does incredible. Again, that modest max special attack Fire Blast, even without the Life Orb like we had last time, is going to KO Corviknight, Draco's going to Oko things like Cloister. Earth Power is still going to hit things like Claude hard. It might not hit it as hard because it has such big spit def, but it'll hit it hard. Earth Power, Draco. Like, this thing does really well offensively for an offensive spiker, and that's going to be kind of how we hopefully end up using it. Then we have our Iron Moth here. Does really, really well in the matchup. We are just dual stab psychic agility. If we can find the opportunity to chip down that Claude, which I think a lot of our team can do, you see the first 3 members on our team pretty much just beat it 1v1 pretty darn easy, and the last 2 don't really hate it either. If we can just get in range of psychic, we're going to be in a good spot. And then if you look at the other 2 stabs, and Fire Dance plus Sludge Wave hits everything really, really hard. Psychic is also nice for the Iron Hands as well. Then we have, again, a Fizz Def Restock Azumarill, a little bit more mixed def and things like that. But we take on the Roaring Moon very, very well. He does not really deal with us very well at all. We can Rest Talk up in his face and really, really chip him down. Chip down things like Corviknight U-turn, and like we said, chip down Iron Hands on a sack or even on a fighting move if we're going to pivot and things like that. We are accidentally thick fat. I don't think I meant to be thick fat in this matchup, to be completely honest. But who knows, it could come up clutch for extra fire resistances and things like that. And then we have a Spirit Tomb here. It is pretty physically defensive. This is actually going to be our main Iron Hands check. And honestly, a solid endgame win con in Shadow Ball, Will-O-Wisp, Pain Split, and Calm Mind. Again, if we can get rid of that Clodsire or chip it down to range of Shadow Ball, we'll be in a good spot. As well as, if you look at the rest of his team, he doesn't appreciate boosted ghost moves. Even if they're not coming off of a strong stat, we'll be able to Calm Mind and really bully through them. So hopefully Spirit Tomb will do well here. And again, things like Moon can take us on defensively, but we catch it with a Wisp, it's crippled. Then we have double Helm in the back, like it's plus CHIEN PAO, plus Garchomp, like it's not gonna really be around for the long haul. You know, hopefully, if we do play things correctly and well. Okay, with that being said, we can go ahead and jump right into it. Our opponent's going to lead off with Arm Rouge, so I'll lead off with my Chomp. I figure Spikes are pretty free here. Again, he doesn't really keep them away very well. Cloister can't spin, and Corviknight we do beat 1v1, provided we hit really any Fire Blast at all. He is going to go ahead and elect to stay in and Terra Ice immediately, which is good to know for me, because now, one, my CHIEN PAO can, like, my CHIEN PAO can actually hit this thing with a Sacred Sword, whereas I couldn't really hit it with any coverage before. But 2, we know what typing he is, and he popped it very, very early. I'm going to be able to get up a Spike in the thing's face, and even if it is Terra Ice, Terra Blast, I will be able to eat this hit up and, you know, play accordingly, which is great. Now, this next turn, 1, that is a ridiculous amount. Next turn, my earliness in the generation kind of shows a little bit. This was 2 days after Christmas when I originally played this, so it's only like a month after the gen. I hadn't played an Arm Rouge in battle yet. I kind of blanked and forgot it got Flash Fire, and I might have Fire Blasted it. All I needed to do was Earth Power, because I just revenged it the next turn. It's not the biggest deal in the world, just because it's funny, but I am going to go into my CHIEN PAO right here, and I am going to click a Choice Band Adamant Sacred Sword. This was severely in my favor to knock him out. I put myself in a bad spot by, you know, going and putting myself in that bad spot by going for that Fire Blast. But again, we don't get punished out here. We're able to knock him out. Now, he's going to go out into his Clodsire knowing that I am Choice Band from that. Probably knowing that he stayed in just to, like, assuming that he lived any hit minus a Choice Band Sacred Sword. Knows that we are now. I'm going to make the pivot out into Spirit Tomb right here, as I believe he does just set up rocks, and this is going to allow me to get up a big, big Wisp and just burn something and chips things down. We're able to catch the Corviknight coming in, which is obviously incredible for us. It's going to be really, really solid. He is going to elect to go for a taunt right here on our switch out into the Foray, which makes sense because we could have just kind of calm-minded all over him at that point if we wanted to. But again, there's still the Clodsire in the back, so I didn't really feel like I needed to do that at that point. I don't know. And I'd rather get out into my Fortress right here and either punish U-turn and make him take some Helmet Chip, or get a Rapid Spin off and get rid of these rocks pretty much indefinitely, because I can kind of always come in on Clodsire going forward. So I am going to elect to just Rapid Spin this next turn. Claude is going to come out and take that spin. Nice 11%. He's already down at 65, so pretty chipped. I make the pivot hard out into CHIEN PAO, expecting potential rocks again, but he actually just Earthquakes, and this is going to give me a KO. There's nothing he can really do about it. He does not appreciate switching into this Pokemon, and if I Terra Dark Crunch, he really couldn't viably go out into his Cloister at that point. So I am going to hit him with that big Icicle Crash. This next turn, I'm going to pivot out into Fortress, because he actually just elects to Icicle Spear. He's just trying to probably chip down my Fortress in order to put him in range later on, which makes sense, because if he Shell Smashes, I just kind of, you know, don't have to worry about it afterwards. But this turn, I'm going to elect to try and Volt Switch. He goes out into Claude right here, thinking he can block it, but all I have to do is just click Earthquake after this. He doesn't really switch into Fortress at this point either, which is really, really funny, as Earthquake is going to do a ton of damage as he gets up his rocks. Just going to spin him away as he goes out into the moon. Now, in hindsight, this next play was a bit dumb by me, in the sense that I probably should have just gone Azumarill. I understand that this thing can be mixed, especially in like Fortress matchups where this thing has no Spadef. But in my head, I was just like, you know, if he's Fire Blast, he's Fire Blast, whatever. I don't need Fortress, which is fair. I don't need Fortress, but it would have been nice for the hands. It would have been nice for the Cloister. It would have been nice if like the Clodsire got off a random rock somehow, which I don't think it ever will be able to, but it would have been nice regardless. So I kind of sack off my forward for no reason here. Wasn't really a need. Okay, but it ends up happening that way. I'm going to go into my Chien Pao here, and instead of locking into Icicle Crash or even Ice Shard, I'm actually going to click Sacred Sword. One being, Icicle Crash can miss. Two being, if I lock into an Ice move, it lets that Cloister run for free. Whereas if I just Sacred Sword, I'm going to be able to prevent any kind of setup shenanigans and things like that. So I do just Sacred Sword here. Iron Hands is going to be able to come out next. I pivot onto a Spirit Tomb. This is my check to this thing, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to try and check this thing, as I am going to get parried by a Thunder Punch on the switch in. I can't complain too much, though. It's not the end of the world. Spikes are going to hit that Clodsire, just giving me an extra turn of leftovers, as Cloister's going to come out, and I kind of see what's happening here. I'm like, oh, well, shit, I know what he's doing. He's trying to set up on me getting parried so that he can win with this Cloister right here, because it definitely wins if it gets up a free Shell Smash. So, he is going to Shell Smash up. I am going to throw off a big Shadow Ball, provided I can break through, and I do, thankfully. So, you're going to see it goes down to 2%. He's going to Hydro Pump and mix, probably miss. He's going to Hydro Pump and miss. He was probably mixed for my Fortress, so ends up biting him right there. I'm pretty sure Icicle's would have killed too, but we're able to knock him out with a second Shadow Ball, which is great. Then out comes Iron Hands. I don't really have to play for differential. It didn't really matter for the buy. It only mattered within your pool if you're like, you know, going up head to head against someone because you have the same record. We're gonna go 4-0 here, so there's no real reason for me to, like, you know, BM it or anything like that. So yeah, we're gonna go into our Chien Pao. We're just gonna click a Choice Band, Psychic Fangs, knock this guy out, and again, move on to a 4-0 record in pools, and hopefully put ourselves in a position to get a bye, which, spoilers, we did. We were able to get a bye, which moved us on, I believe, to the round of like 256, and that will be our next, what do you call it? I'm gonna have to cut that out. That will be our next battle here, our next video here on the Smoke on Tour. It'll probably go up next week, something like that. I don't know which day yet or anything like that, but it'll probably be next week. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this little mini movie. If you guys are excited for the next one, let me know in the comments below. And honestly, if you made it this far in the video, I want you to comment 1 to 10 how good you think Chien Pao is in the video. I don't want you to comment, I think Chien Pao is a 10 out of 10. I always want you to comment 10. 9, 8, 7, whatever you think it is, comment that, and that's how I'll know. That's how I'll know you watched this entire however long video and enjoyed it. So yeah, thank you guys for watching though. I'll see you in the next one. Later.